Mount up! We're coming!
Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here, and what an eventful day out at TCO Performance Center. It was a lively practice, definitely the practice of the year so far, and I've got, 20 different notes, to go along with Josh Metellus signing a contract extension. So we will get into it. I'm going to break down JJ McCarthy's performance today in full here to start the show and then give you all the rest of the notes from today. I figured that it would be a really hard practice because they have the day off tomorrow, and I'm not resting my voice though. I'm actually going to host on WCCO radio tomorrow morning. So if you're driving around, put it on 8:30 a.m. If you still have the AM dial in your car, throw it on there. I'll be there. But there is a lot to get into, so I'm not going to waste any time here. Let's talk about what JJ McCarthy did out on the field today. I would say that it was one of the better practices that I have seen JJ McCarthy have so far in his career at any time, going back to this mini camp, OTAs, last year's training camp, last year's mini camp. And what we saw from him was the progress of his arm and his development. And it was interesting because Kevin O'Connell in his press conference before practice, he talked about JJ McCarthy making a lot of the touch throws, the ones that I'm doing a story about how defenses play zone all the time now, that the zone coverage in the NFL is increasing and increasing, which means a lot of times that throws have to go over linebackers, in front of safeties, into these tight spaces that aren't just tight windows throwing in between guys, but also over guys as well, which takes a lot of touch. And the first completion of the day for JJ McCarthy was just that. It was a touch pass where Jalen Naylor ran a deep out, call it 15 yards. I'm never going to have yardages perfect when I'm just trying to write it down in my notes. Call it 15 to 20 yard deep out. And he threw it up over linebacker to Jalen Naylor open. And after that play, as McCarthy was coming back, Kevin O'Connell seemed really pumped up about that particular throw because everything about it worked. The timing, the delivery, the accuracy, the reception from Jalen Naylor. And I think that got the practice off on a really good foot. Now, it wasn't perfect, and I will get into the imperfections of some of the things from McCarthy's practice, but I want to go through kind of the high end part of those as we went by. And just to kind of paint the picture here, they did a lot of 11 on 11s today, and then there was the occasional red zone for a little while and a little bit of 7 on 7, but I mean, it was mostly 11 on 11. So this was a full kind of practice. But the one caveat to all of this for how good McCarthy looked is that, especially early in training camp, there's not a lot of ones versus ones. There's usually ones versus twos and twos versus ones. So part of the reason that Sam Howell is struggling as much as he is, and he had another pretty rough day today, is that he's going against the number one defense, and all of the players on the D line are better than the offensive linemen. And it works the opposite way for McCarthy too. They are going up against the backup players. So it is Jordan Addison and Jalen Naylor versus younger guys, backups, things like that. But still, you want the practice to execute this way. And so they have sections where it's, 11 on 11, and then you go do the red zone, and then you go back. So in the first section, he hits this Jalen Naylor throw. And then before the, call it a segment or a section of practice is done, he also finds TJ Hawkinson across the middle of the field on a very similar type of throw that had touch on it, accuracy, timing. And I just think that that got JJ McCarthy going on a really good foot today with his entire performance to start out the practice so well, because 2 days ago, it was not that good of a practice and the timing didn't look that great and things were a little bit wonky and disjointed. So it was sort of like everybody was locked into this one, dialed in, and then JJ McCarthy starts it out really well. A little later in the practice, there was, I think, a good awareness moment for JJ McCarthy. You guys know that Aaron Rodgers, when he was at his best, would make teams pay if they jump off sides. So there was one play where McCarthy gets up to the line of scrimmage, gives a hard cadence, somebody jumps off sides, and it immediately clicks with him. I got to go downfield. Drops back, fires a, I would say, 40 to 45-yard bomb to Jalen Nailor. And Nailor goes up, reaches up. It would have hit him right in the face mask, and he drops it. But it was a perfect throw from JJ McCarthy on that type of play where you have to realize the situation, right? The other team has jumped off sides. The defense, this is the time to take a shot downfield because it's a free play. And he made a perfect throw deep down the field. And that was it's been asked about 100 times over the offseason. Well, what is JJ McCarthy's deep ball really like? Well, he showed it on another occasion in this practice as well, to Jordan Addison, where it was a full stands. People are out there. I guess I wouldn't say it was packed because it is 90 degrees. So that was part of it, that it was super, super hot today. But there was a lot of fans there today, and, or at least, probably the stands weren't packed 100% the whole time because people are walking around, they're doing things with kids and whatever else. But the point is, there's a big crowd there. So he drops back, Addison burns his guy, and he drops it 50 yards. I think he dropped back at the 40-yard line, and the ball at the 10-yard line hit Jordan Addison's hands right in stride. I mean, never had to slow down, never had to back off or wait for the ball to get there. Perfectly dropped it right in to Jordan Addison. And that's now a couple of times that when JJ McCarthy has let loose a deep ball, he did it on day one of practice. And this one was a higher tempo and a much more aggressive practice than day one. And he hit two more deep down the field that looked really good and then showed touch as well. Another thing to mention is that the wide receivers that played with JJ McCarthy today, Kevin O'Connell had name dropped four guys that were rotating in when Justin Jefferson went down, but we only saw two of them today. It was a little bit of Ty Felton. I counted 3 reps. I know O'Connell doesn't like when we count reps, but that's what we do. So I counted 3. Maybe there was 4 for Ty Felton out there with JJ McCarthy. All the rest actually went to Lucky Jackson. Now, my guess on this, so we didn't see Rondale Moore, we didn't see Jay Sean Jones. My guess on that is Lucky Jackson is known as a high IQ player, a veteran. Even though he hasn't played a lot in the NFL in actual games, he has been on this team for 2 years, and he's played pro ball before that in the XFL. So Nailor. I mean, of course it's Nailor and Addison, but the other receiver when they're with 3 wide receivers out there. Sorry, just to clarify, Nailor was out there, but the other receiver taking that spot was Lucky Jackson almost exclusively. And I think the reason why is because he knows the offense better than these other guys. Like Jay Sean Jones was on the practice squad just last year, still a young receiver. Ty Felton just got here. He's a rookie. And Rondale Moore also got here. And this was an important practice to them. So they needed guys to run the right routes, to be in the right spot. This was not a teaching phase type of practice. This was a push the throttle all the way down. Everybody's playing hard today. Everybody's going to go home tired type of practice. So they needed Lucky Jackson out there. And I got to tell you, Lucky Jackson was fantastic. He had 2 different catches where he came over the middle and JJ McCarthy hit him right on the money, and he was able to make the catch. Jackson has been good for 3 years in these practices, and maybe this is the time. And maybe this is the time that it's a real battle. We've spent a lot of time discussing Rondale Moore and what he could bring to this team. and it's very possible that he still can, and that he's going to get his chance with the pads come on to really show his stuff. And when he's completely comfortable with the offense, maybe he works in even more with the first team. But for today, Lucky Jackson made a really, really good impression playing the role of Justin Jefferson, or I guess it's probably the role of Jalen Nailor, is what it actually is. So everybody slots up. Jordan Addison takes over for Jefferson. Jalen Nailor takes over for Addison, and everybody's supposed to be cross trained on all the jobs. And Lucky Jackson slides in. It would be a great story if Lucky Jackson, because of this, that he was able to make the team, or find his way into the roster or into the lineup because of this time where Justin Jefferson is out. Now, I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but the point is just that Lucky Jackson was really, really good. He was on point today, and the throws from JJ McCarthy were good as well. Now, the most important thing for me is the timing with JJ McCarthy, because I think that his timing today in getting rid of the football, throwing it when he's supposed to throw it, and then throwing it accurately was very good. And even just getting rid of a deep ball where you can't, with a deep ball, you have to put your foot in the dirt and then lead your wide receiver, but you have to throw it on time still. You can't just kind of mosey back there and heave it up. Like you gotta throw it on time. And I thought that his timing and accuracy for the most part of this practice were very good. And he hit some downfield highlight reel passes. And this is why I say all the time on the show that I don't think that Kevin O'Connell is going to say to JJ McCarthy, okay, you're a screen pass merchant. You are a play action quarterback. All you're going to do is throw bubbles to Jordan Addison and Rondale Moore and Ty Felton, and you're going to let them go. And we're going to run first and then play action occasionally off it. I don't think that is what this offense is going to be, because it's never looked like that in practice, not last year and not this year today, because today was the first serious practice. Those first two practices were like, okay, where's everybody lined up? And did it sort of look like football? Today was football. It was, and I'm excited about it. It was football. It was like, all right, now we're really back. And then the pads are about to come on. The fans are here. The atmosphere is good. Somebody got a contract extension. Like, all right, here we go. Football, right? Now, the downside with McCarthy is that he does have these moments. Now, here's the thing about trying to analyze every practice is if Kirk Cousins had some inaccurate throws, we would just be like, man, like we know what Kirk Cousins is, and we're not going to pick apart every single throw. So there was a period of the practice where McCarthy did have a couple inaccurate throws. One of them was just kind of a dirt ball, and then another one was just off target. But there was only a couple that I could say that weren't on point. But even then, even when the throws have been inaccurate, the ball has come out on time and generally in the direction of the person who's supposed to catch it. But today, he really, really showed off the arm talent. And if you had a lot of questions about that still, even after we've reported numerous times that the arm looks pretty live, I thought today was the one where if you were in attendance at practice and you saw him throw the way he did, that you wouldn't have any questions about how hard JJ McCarthy could throw the ball. Can JJ McCarthy throw the ball deep down the field to Jordan Addison and Jalen Nailor? Yes, he absolutely can and did today. Does this mean that the Vikings are headed to the Super Bowl? Of course not yet. But all I can say is that from witnessing this practice and the progress of JJ McCarthy throwing the ball, it has been immense. It has been immense growth over the last 2 years or a year, I guess. How long has it been? He was hurt last year in August. So I guess it would be the last, year and a half. He was drafted in April, early May, got here at rookie minicamp and was very inaccurate and really struggled throwing the football accurately and putting any touch on it. And he still has his moments with that. And O'Connell talked about it and talked about like that's the thing that they are really hammering home is being able to find these windows and he was able to do that really well today. I could think of 4 different plays where drops back on time into the right window. Hawkinson, Addison, Naylor. We were just talking about last night. Like, is he leaning on one particular receiver? And I think here was what jumped out to me was that multiple of the plays that I'm talking about with McCarthy today, they went to Lucky Jackson. And as much as I think it's great that Lucky Jackson has pushed his way to the front of the line here after at one point being an XFL guy, they're not dialing up the plays for Lucky Jackson, right? They're dialing up the plays to go to Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson and Jalen Naylor with those first couple of receivers. So if you're getting to Lucky Jackson in the progression, but it's also coming out on time, that means it's probably going right. So it was not flawless. There were inaccurate throws. There were a couple that you just went, ooh, like what happened on that one? But the overall takeaway from today is that JJ McCarthy looked in complete command of this practice and there were some struggles in the red zone drill, finding receivers. That could be a tough one for the quarterback, completing a couple passes down into the red zone. But I'm looking more at the 11 on 11s when it comes to evaluating a practice rather than a red zone drill. And when it really gets interesting is those 2-minute drills. Those are probably the most telling of anything for how someone is doing with the offense. Are they really getting it? Because they treat it like a real game, which means calling it into the headset. They don't tell them in a script before what's going to happen. So we didn't see that today. That's when the pads come on. That's going to be on Monday, which should be a really, really exciting day and an exciting show to come home and break down Monday's practice when they finally get the pads. But through this first part of practice, here's how it always goes. You start out, it's the ramp up, it's no pads. Everybody's just getting back to school. And then the pads come on, and it's very, very serious for that week. Then you start to get into the preseason, and the practices are a little less intense because you got some preseason games. Then you got the joint practice. It's this big moment of the offseason. And then final preseason game, cut down day football. And then off we go. So far, if we're going to evaluate JJ McCarthy in each one of those portions of the offseason, I think he gets a very high grade for the start. One practice didn't go that great, but 2 other practices went well. And the hardest practice today, I thought, had a lot of highlight throws for JJ McCarthy. And as we try to use this information to project what it's going to look like going forward, I mean, we have to say that there will be times where he throws inaccurate footballs when we get to the regular season. And when I see them in practice, I go, yeah, okay. So that's one that's kind of like the old thing creeping up on him. So imagine if you're a golfer and you've worked really hard on your 95-yard pitching wedge shot, right? And you're doing it and you're getting it better and you're getting the touch, but every once in a while you still blade one and rip it past the green. Like that's kind of what's happening with JJ McCarthy. It's so clearly getting better and better and better. And O'Connell even talked about taking yesterday's practice, which was basically a slow motion walkthrough, and focusing with McCarthy on those types of throws. And he said it kind of sounds silly because of how slow it was, but I like the way that he threw the football to even just prepare for today's practice. And then you saw it play out. But I think he's seeing the field well. And I think he's getting the ball to different receivers. And now off we go into the more difficult challenge, the more telling challenge. But step 1 has been passed in flying colors. Also physically, that's another part of it too, is that this guy is coming off of an injury. There doesn't seem to be any hitch. There doesn't seem to be any slowdown. He hasn't missed any time, hasn't missed any reps. And one of the small things that I like to see with JJ McCarthy, and it just really comes natural to him, he hits, the deep shot down the field to Jordan Addison. And he's not quite doing the Brett Favre. You guys remember with Brett Favre, he would hit a throw and he would run down there with his arms waving in the air and jump on somebody and whatever. It's not quite that for JJ McCarthy. is a little more chill with his leadership. But he's the first guy there to meet Jordan Addison, high five and the guys, bringing them, back to the huddle after a big play like that. And his natural way of leading the offense, looking like he's in control right from the start, is, I think, probably the biggest development. I mean, the throwing I thought would be there because it had made such big strides last year, but the total command of the offense through this part, not saying it's going to be total command every single day when the pads come on and when they start going ones versus ones, it will definitely get harder. But as far as just getting ramped up, getting going, I don't think it could have gone much better for JJ McCarthy for these first couple of days. Sans a handful of throws that he would say, okay, yeah, that one wasn't supposed to go, in the dirt 5 yards in front of somebody, but it's not like there were a ton of those. It's not like the balls were, make the golf analogy. It's not like it was going in the woods all the time. It was kind of like just one that you shank a little bit and then you move on. But a very good practice for JJ McCarthy. All right, let's talk about some other notes here, and then we can get into some of your questions and thoughts. But also, I want to break down the Josh Metellus contract extension as well. And I'll just real quick throw it out there that the disposition of the Purple Insider podcast has been, it'll probably get done about everything for the last 2 years. And here we are. It'll get done. And I guess there's still the Brian Flores contract situation, but I think everything else, and that's not a situation, not yet. That's not a situation until we get to the end of next season. So, push that aside. But everything else, I think we're good with all the contracts that need to be contracted now that Josh Metellus is set up. So I'll get to that in a moment, but a few other things. So the biggest takeaway clearly was Lucky Jackson and a handful of looks for Ty Felton, but that was it. No other receiver got in there, and maybe that is just some more experience. It was another tough day for Sam Howell, and I don't think until the pads come on and until we see more full practices that you can quite push any panic buttons on Sam Howell. But it was bad. It was another bad practice where my biggest issue with Howell is when he played for Washington, he led the league in sacks, and he's really struggled to get the football out. When he throws it, it's not like it's been way off when he's actually thrown it, but he's not throwing it. Like, they were doing a red zone drill and he scrambled, I think twice. And then they go back and look, Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, these guys are beating the second team offensive line, but you just got to throw it anyway. And there were just very few opportunities. Tim Jones had a nice catch in the back of the end zone on a red zone drill, but there were just very few opportunities for second team wide receivers to stand out with Sam Howell in there. And then Brett Rippon came in and got the ball out, completed some passes. And another note today was actually Max Brosmer looked really good at the end of practice. He had a crossing route to Silas Bolden, who made his first kind of appearance for us today. Silas Bolden is the undersized, undrafted free agent from Texas. He had a nice catch across the middle. And then to wrap up practice, Brosmer dropped back. And this is what I've liked about Brosmer the whole time. And you hear me say it time and time again, but it just correlates to success. Ball comes out. So Brosmer drops back. He's got Dante Fleming, who is about the deepest guy on the roster right now, coming across the middle of the field, hits him on point. Very good throw from Brosmer. And so the number 3 quarterbacks played better today by a lot. They weren't facing the number 1 defense, but at every turn Brosmer gets out there, he seems to do something well. So I think that still remains a competition. And in the competition through the first portion of these practices of Sam Howell versus himself, it has not gone that well for Sam Howell. That doesn't mean they have to go out and start having conversations yet with other guys or calling agents of retired quarterbacks. Phil Rivers, unfortunately, off the table after officially retiring the other day. But I think that the heat got turned up on Sam Howell over these last couple of of days because it just has been such a struggle. Otherwise, I did notice that Bo Richter was taking a lot more of the second team snaps instead of Tyler Batty. Richter last year, undrafted free agent out of Air Force, somebody that I've been excited about on this team since last year as one of those guys that could come out of nowhere. Bo Richter is a guy that had crazy athletic scores and high production, but it was at Air Force and it was just 1 year. And he ends up on the active roster, was good on special teams last year and kind of showed what he could do. That's when I wrote about him. Whoops, hang on. Audio is not supposed to be on there. I wrote about him last year, and it wasn't surprising to see him getting a little bit more in terms of the reps with the second team, and then Gabe Murphy on the other side with him. Also today, hey, by the way, Josh Metellus and Kevin O'Connell was clearly not happy with any of you for suggesting, not that I did this. Don't go watch the show from the other day. He was not happy with any of you who accused Josh Metellus of sitting out with a fake ankle injury. So he was actually out today with an ankle injury, should be back on Monday. But that gave opportunities for Theo Jackson and Jay Ward to get out there and play a lot. Also, Isaiah Rodgers did not practice today. Did not get any sense that there's a serious issue with Isaiah Rodgers. Before practice, there was a ton of praise from Kevin O'Connell about Rodgers and just sort of, I'm always listening for, hey, what I think, does it match up with what I'm hearing from the coaches? And Kevin O'Connell said a lot of great things about Isaiah Rodgers. One that he said was that he doesn't panic, that he has a calmness to him, and he's clearly one of the fastest players on the team, but he didn't get in there today. So we saw a lot of Jeff Okudah. Byron Murphy had a phenomenal practice. He had a pass breakup. He was physical and aggressive. I think Byron Murphy is still taking another step in his career, especially the more that he can get in the nickel. I really like Byron Murphy as a nickel player, but he hasn't gotten quite as much work there because maybe injuries or just the fact that they didn't love the situation with Shaq Griffin last year. And then the other thing is that the way that the lineup worked out, Josh Metellus was kind of taking that nickel role. If you look at his usage, he's playing as a linebacker or more of a nickel corner. And so they didn't really play the nickel package as much. That might move Murphy this year inside. He just seems so comfortable in that role. So he had a great practice today. We actually did see, some of you have asked about Ambry Thomas. Ambry Thomas is the guy who was a third-round pick from the 49ers. He got some second-team reps, so everybody kind of bumped up a little bit. It was the starters, it was Okudah, and it was Murphy, and everybody else kind of got some opportunities to mix in there in the secondary today. Harrison Smith also, it looked like it was just probably a veteran day for him. Something else I noticed, if we want to go a little deeper in the roster. Actually, something more important first. We have discussed a lot what it's going to look like with Dallas Turner. So where is Dallas Turner going to play? How are they going to mix in Dallas Turner? It's one of the biggest questions of camp. And at some point, I figured they had to show some of their cards. And it looked to me today like Andrew Van Ginkel was playing more of a linebacker position on some plays. And I think that's what I suspected, which was that Van Ginkel, having been a linebacker in Miami more often, he's always played outside linebacker, but he did line up as more of a traditional inside linebacker at times. So he was doing that to get all three guys on the field at the same time. And then Turner is also taking all the second team reps. So Dallas Turner, they are working his tail off here in this camp. They want him to be 100% ready to go when they arrive there. But that's the one little twist that I think we could see. And Van Ginkel can do anything, play anywhere. That's his skill set. And I love that idea for them because he is such a good cover linebacker, an unusual guy for that, but he's such a good cover linebacker to get all three of them on the field. And then you can always mix and match from there. But that was the first time we kind of saw that today. And then deep on the roster, I will continue to say it, that Xavier Scott has been good in this camp so far. And it's very early. He is the running back, who I guess is RB4 right now ahead of Trey Stewart. If you don't count CJ Ham, he's FB1 forever, fullback one for the Vikings. But after Ty Chandler, Xavier Scott has gotten a lot of reps and has shown some really nice hands. He used to be a wide receiver. I continue to notice him on a daily basis. That is as deep as it gets in the roster. And we got a real battle on our hands, folks, with Logan Brown and Walter Rouse, the undrafted free agent offensive lineman. Logan Brown, big giant dude, who had really good numbers coming out of college, good athleticism, and Rouse, who they drafted last year. They were switching them back and forth between left tackle and right tackle today, which I didn't really expect, but was like, oh, wow, okay, that's interesting. And I can't imagine how hard that must be because they were taking a lot of reps against the first team. So, hey, Logan Brown, why don't you go play Jonathan Grenard? But on the next time, why don't you go play Andrew Van Ginkel? And then maybe if you're lucky, you get to face the first round draft pick from last year, Dallas Turner. So those guys had a rough day, and they will continue to have rough days. But Rouse and Brown seem like they're going back and forth. Zemiah Vaughn was mixing in. The corners got a lot of work with the second team. They were kind of rotating each guy, but Mekhi Blackman was out there a lot. Zemiah Vaughn was out there a lot. So, but a couple other guys got opportunities with Isaiah Rodgers not in for today. One other thing, I know you guys have been waiting for an update on Will Reichard. I know it. With Will Reichard, well, he finally kicked today, making it officially training camp. It is finally a real and true training camp when Will Reichard has taken his first kicks. Well, he went 5 for 6 on his field goals. So there you go. He missed, I think, from 48, but it was super windy. Kind of came out of nowhere a little bit with a gust of wind. If you guys have ever been out there, if you've been to a practice or just Egan in general, it's very hilly and the airport is near there. And I don't know what any of that has to do with wind, but it is always windy on that field. So it's a little bit tough on the kickers, but he nailed a 54-yarder halfway or more up the goalpost to wrap up camp, or at least that practice before the off day. So Will Reichard looking just fine to start the practice. Okay, now let's that was today's practice. Again, it was a fun one. It was a fun one. And if McCarthy picks up where he left off today, when they get the pads on, they can really build on this, and they're going to start to feel pretty good about QB1 going forward if it goes like this as they get the pads on. So let's get into Josh Metellus and his contract extension. And before we get to what Kevin O'Connell had to say, what Josh Metellus had to say, I just want to say that I have really, really enjoyed the journey of Josh Metellus. He arrives as a 6th-round draft pick in a year where there's no training camp, no opportunity for young players, and he gets cut out of the gate. And I remember thinking like, oh, well, that's tough. 6th-round draft pick. He'll be on the practice squad. It is what it is. And then he's on special teams. And I think in 2022, in my initial 53, just had him getting cut. So I was like, he's just a special teamer. They're bringing in some of their own guys for Ed Donatel. And I don't know if it's going to work out for Josh Metellus. He just hadn't really done much to put him on my radar from the outside. And then all of a sudden he gets a chance to get in a couple of games, and he was pretty good in 2022. And then in 2023, Brian Flores, who is a better player evaluator than me, comes in and says, oh yeah, I want that guy to be a big part of the operation. And this is the cheat code of having Brian Flores, is identifying someone like Josh Metellus' skill, but also one thing that cannot be overstated with Josh Metellus is character, and character matters a ton. I think it's not sexy. It doesn't get TV debate topics, but it matters so much. Intelligence, effort, leadership, setting the standard for everybody around you, and toughness. Josh Metellus, one of the tougher players on the team that you're going to find, and was our media good guy, the Corey Stringer Award from last year. Always available, always accountable, if you will. to the media and the public and his teammates, and one of the more active guys in the community. So you're not going to find too many better stories than somebody who got cut out of their first camp becoming a huge piece of a top 5 defense and now getting a contract extension. It is a great story for Josh Metellus. So here is what he had to say about his new contract.
How confident were you this was going to get done?
Oh, I mean, I would say I was just confident in the work that I put in, man. I head down and grinded since the day I got in this league. And I knew, at some point it was going to pay off, whether that was now, whether that was later. I knew that, if I just keep doing what I'm supposed to do and keep being consistent, that it was going to pay off.
What's it meant to, earn belief from others in what you can do?
It meant a lot. From front office down to the coaches, down to my teammates, just that trust and that belief in me as a player, me as a leader, me as a guy, comes into this building and gives my all and, always where my feet are. It means a lot to have people backing you, and that's a big reason why I am where I am today. I didn't do this without, all the people in my circle. This is for everybody around me. This isn't just for me. I'm a product of my environment, and my environment has done really well.
How tough was this contract potentially because of the fact that you play so many different spots? I think you're officially a safety, but you also play some corner, linebacker. How tough was it to get to a price point based on the multitude of places that you play? And you're pretty unique in this league in that sense.
Yeah, I'm not going to act like I don't do things that a lot of people in this league don't do. But, at the end of the day, we figured it out. I think, that's something that Kwesi and Drew, had to figure out, what do we like to put at the top of what matters the most, really. And at the end of the day, football is football.
So there's Josh Metellus coming from a 6th round pick to now a captain on the team long term over the next 3 years. So I imagine that you guys want to talk about the details of the contract. So I'll get to what KOC had to say about Josh Metellus in just a moment. But here's the details of Metellus's contract. According to Mr. Adam Schefter of ESPN, the deal is worth $36 million with a max value of $42 million, which I'm not sure what it takes to get that extra $8 million. So we'll go with 36 and $25 million guaranteed. And what's funny about his contract is that I had evaluated this thing with really only 2 players in mind, because there were only 2 safeties that I could think of that were similar to Josh Metellus with how much they played in the box, how versatile they were, but also the character element as well. And those 2 guys were, I'm sure you heard the names enough, Justin Reed, formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs, but now with the New Orleans Saints, and Trayvon Moehrig, who had played for the Raiders and then got signed this offseason with the Carolina Panthers. So Moehrig was making about $17 million per year, which I thought if I was on Metellus's side, I would be trying to push for, because Cam Bynum got 15, and this is somebody who plays up in the box in Moehrig. He's an impact player, maybe not the most flawless cover guy, but he is aggressive and physical and all those sorts of things, and he got 17. And then Reed has all the character makeup, all the great leadership and all that sort of stuff, also plays up in the box, multiple positions, and he got 10.5. And this does land kind of in the middle of that with 3 years and $36 million, a little bit more toward the Justin Reed side. And I think that the Vikings probably had more leverage in this situation because, and they didn't want to, but in a negotiation, you have to say, how much do you think you'll get on the open market? And I do believe that Josh Metellus is more valuable here with this team, this locker room, this defense than Josh Metellus might be if he played for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that's true. And so if the team was arguing that, like, hey, with this environment, it's the best possible environment for you. And I don't know, and there's actually truth to this, that guys who are 6th round draft picks, even if they're good and they've played well, they don't always get as much money as guys who are former firsts who get the mega contracts. So if he were to go out into the open market, then another team might not say, oh, this is a guy who's going to turn around our defense that we want to give $17 million per year. Instead, he might get much more toward that Justin Reed number. So it's a little bit in the middle, closer to Reed than it is Trayvon Moehrig, but also still above Justin Reed. I think it's a great number for the Vikings, and I think it's a good number for Josh Metellus too, because they do have an argument with that. What other team is going to pay you as much as us? But Josh Metellus can also say, hey, but I'm pretty darn valuable to you guys. And now that's all locked in. And when you think about 3 years, 36, that's not going to be restrictive. 25 million guaranteed, not something that's going to hold them back. They might add some void years or something into that to make it all work a little bit better into the future. But now I think we can really paint the picture. I've got plans for this in the future to have a cap expert on to talk about this, but I think we can really paint the picture of what the Minnesota Vikings salary cap situation is going to look like going forward. And this right here is just more evidence that having a rookie quarterback contract is a huge deal, because in the past, a deal like this, I mean, think about the ones that we haggled over and battled over and talked about when Kirk Cousins was the quarterback. They had guys leave, of course, but even signing someone like Kyle Rudolph, which is good. You want Kyle Rudolph on your football team, but all of a sudden you sign Kyle Rudolph to a little bit more than you want, and it becomes, that Kyle Rudolph extension that got in the way. And then now they had to let this guy go or that guy go because everything was so restricted by the quarterback contract. And we talked about it as a philosophy for so long, but now that it's becoming a reality, you can really see what you can do as a front office with the free agents they've signed, the extensions they've handed out. And technically they are over the cap for next year, but they can do stuff with that and keep this group together over multiple years. And that's another thing too, is that I'm not really looking forward to next March because I don't think we're going to have a lot to do. Like, this is the Minnesota Vikings now, and there aren't a lot of questions. Like, when I think about next year and the biggest free agents, maybe I'm missing somebody, but so like Jalen Naylor, like everybody else is under contract. So Kevin O'Connell was elated. And I think something that we have to appreciate about Kevin O'Connell, especially as we see what's going on in Chicago, where it seems like Ben Johnson might be one of those, I'm an X's and O's genius, but doesn't know how to manage people at all. I think Kevin O'Connell has a really, really good sense for who the right personalities are to lead his locker room, who the right guys are to keep in those positions, put in those positions, and build close relationships with. And I think it really means a lot to him when someone like Josh Metellus gets rewarded like he did today. And you can kind of see the dynamic of the locker room and the leaders that they've built up together as all being O'Connell type of guys. It's one of those mini little cheat codes that I think KOC has, is relating to people, connecting with players on a deeper level, and identifying who has leadership traits to put in the right position as Josh Metellus. So here is O'Connell talking Metellus.
I think it's just been throughout, Flo's time here and how they've continued to layer upon layer things in the defense based upon his roles, and which are inside the box as a linebacker type. He can be a down safety. He can play big nickel. He can play man-to-man coverage at all 5 spots, whether it's a really good back. We've put him on, the Christian McCaffreys of the world. We've put him on dynamic tight ends, bigger slot receivers, and allows our corners to stay matched and then also hold a lot of the disguise that we want to show as well. So I think a lot of it's there. Obviously he played a really high snap count a year ago, as versatile as he was, and we got to be aware of our depth going into the season to make sure we can keep our guys fresh, because we're going to want to have our guys out there all the time. But that's also something that I've got to be aware of, Flo, making sure we've got some guys that can step in and also play in those spots.
What do you appreciate about Josh in terms of what he brings to the organization beyond what he does on the field?
Yeah, I think, it seems like every community event, every chance to, connect with the Twin Cities and, the hearts and souls of all people matter to Josh. And he can't wait to hand out turkeys on Thanksgiving. He can't wait to go, host his own, charitable event to get out with kids or folks at, one of our, medical centers in town. Like, every time that I hear about us doing something, he's involved. I think he's really proud to be a Minnesota Viking. I think his journey is something that means a lot to him.
Kevin O'Connell putting it really well. And I also appreciate that about O'Connell. When something like this happens, he grasps the importance of it. And I think really can communicate what somebody means to him quite well. And for Josh Metellus, I mean, you've got to feel appreciated after comments like that. Now, there is a storyline with Josh Metellus for this year's camp. And it's something that I'm going to be watching really closely. Is Mattelis has been playing more of that free safety type of role. Now, Brian Flores didn't seem to like when it was called a traditional safety role, but that's where he was to start camp. Doesn't mean it's where he'll be for the entire camp. And Theo Jackson has looked good, as he always does. Looks like he's in the right spots, had a couple of pass breakups, and has been mixing in there in dime packages. And Theo was in there today. Again, when the ball doesn't come out of Sam Howell's hands, I mean, I guess that means the safeties must be doing pretty well. But we'll see. Theo, we know, is a playmaker and that they trust him and that they believe in him, and they gave him a contract extension as well. So just the first couple of days of camp don't guarantee that Josh Metellus will be playing a traditional safety spot, but that is where he's lined up over these few days. And what I thought is potentially the case could be that Mattelis plays more like Harrison Smith, and Harrison Smith plays more like Cam Bynum at times, where Mattelis is the guy who's up at the line of scrimmage, and it's Harrison Smith who's playing a little more of the deep ball hawk type of role and then coming up to the line of scrimmage. They could change that around because Harrison Smith is capable of just about anything, and I know it is part of his value for his career to get up into the box. But if you're asking who can read the route combinations, jump in front of the football, get turnovers, I mean, Harrison Smith has been that guy as well throughout his career. So here's what O'Connell had to say about Josh Metellus' role this year.
With Cam Bynum leaving and there's that spot that's there, like, do you think that anything fundamentally changes with the way he'll be deployed this year as a result of just having different guys now?
Well, I think the starting point to his role is versatility, which, depending on the snap, first down, second down, third down, what personnel flow has us in, he could line up. Really, I think at one point last year, I counted in one game, he lined up in 7 different spots. So I think his role is wildly dynamic, but he's proven to be able to handle the deep part of the field, play man-to-man coverage on some tight ends and slots. We play big nickel with 5 DBs out there with 3 safeties. We're excited about where Theo's at as well and the rest of our safeties. So I think having Harrison and Josh both back, although, that combination with Cam a year ago was really big for our defense. We feel good about Theo in that deep part of the field role. But as you guys have seen, it's such a, wildly kind of flexible defense that you can be really in any spot at any time and you got to go play. And the communication's the biggest thing, especially at home when we get in the noise. Like, we love playing at home because of the noise, but that can stress a lot. And I think Josh is right up there with Harrison Smith as far as the guys that communicate at such a world-class level that all 11 can be on the same page.
Kevin O'Connell. So there you go. He seemed to indicate there that Josh Metellus is still going to have a very versatile role in this defense. And the one thing is always a PSA about training camp is that the beginning parts of camp are laying all the foundations and giving guys the tools, but it's really the couple of weeks before the season starts where they put in a real game plan and they truly decide where guys are going to be, what things are going to happen when they play the Chicago Bears. So we could see one thing all through training camp and we could all report it. We could all have a conversation about it. And they know, by the way, they know that fans are filming stuff up in the stands, even though there's a big sign that asks them not to do that. They know that reporters are standing there. We got a little perch this year that they gave us, which is awesome. So we could see, you could kind of see the, on some of my B-roll here, the angle that we get right here, which is great. But they also know we're reporting this stuff. And sometimes you might not show all of your cards in training camp. I do think that they want Mattelis on the field, and they're going to find ways to get him on the field. They have more good pieces than they have positions that can be out there all at the same time. Like if Van Ginkel moves back to linebacker, does that mean Pace comes off the field? If Josh Metellus is in, then you can't have a nickel situation where maybe you want Byron Murphy in the nickel, but if Metellus was playing the big nickel, then he can't be out there like the 3 safety. So I think what you're going to see is probably all of it. Some plays we're going to look out there and go, oh, okay, that's Theo Jackson is in, and this is a 3 safety. Now that might be dependent on the other team. So Chicago, they have Colson Loveland, who they drafted. They have Cole Kmet. They might go with 2 tight ends, and the 3 safeties might be an answer to 2 tight ends. It might be week to week dependent, but it is something I'm curious about because I never really saw Mattelis as somebody who would be that deep ball hawk type safety. I always saw him as exactly what he turned into, which is get up in the box, use his quickness, his toughness, his intelligence, make quick decisions, punch the ball out, get an interception on an underneath pass or something. That's what he's become. So if he does go to that role back there where you're reading a lot more in front of you and having to have a little more long speed to make up for chasing down wide receivers in the open field, that's something that I'm curious to see from him. So let's start to get into your questions here. Let's fire it up. It's only 51 minutes of notes from today. It was a heck of a practice. It was deserved and also a very, very well deserved. Again, can't say enough good things about Josh Metellus from the years. And it's been a lot of years. It's kind of funny how you have guys like CJ Ham and Harrison Smith and Josh Metellus, who I feel like I've just known for such a long time now. And, when you see a guy who's worked that hard to get an extension like he did today, it's special for him. It means so much to him. I know what it means to him. I know what the work that's gone into it. It's a big deal, and it was really cool to see. So, all right. Alexander kicks us off here. We are 4 practices in. Are you changing the win total, or do you have any thoughts on the win total now? The thoughts on the win total. So if you haven't been following along at home, the win total that I threw out there after minicamp, I bumped it up 1 to 11 wins as my projection for this football team. And while I would not change that after 4 practices, though today featured a lot of fireworks from JJ McCarthy, what I would do is I would raise the confidence level. I'm a ever so slightly more confident in it. And again, if, Justin Jefferson's injury was more serious or something else like that, then I probably would have knocked it down or become a lot less confident in it. But I would say that my confidence after seeing McCarthy early in camp has increased slightly, but has not increased like massively. It's not, guys, I guarantee you they're winning 11 or more. I'm jacking it up. I mean, look, they haven't even put on a pad yet. So we will get there, but keep asking as we go through these different sections of camp, because that's a way that I can think about it for myself. Steven says, Gavin Bartholomew has to be out there in order to surprise people. It's Ben Urisek's tight end 3 job to lose with Bartholomew not on the field. The tight end 3 has been going pretty much nowhere because none of them can get the football from the quarterback because he hasn't been throwing it and instead has been taking sacks and checking down. It is one of the bigger disappointments of the first few days of training camp. And I think Sam Howell has to go back to the drawing board and spend this day off really trying to figure out what it is that he's not seeing. And again, it's really hard. There is a lot of star talent on the defense when he's going 2s versus 1s, but you have to give guys a chance. And I can't say that he has really done that so far during this training camp. So we don't really have a sense for it. I think Ben Urasek would be the guy as of right now. I always try to take a look, like who's out there first, who goes out with the first guys with the second team. And that was Urasek. May have had a catch today. It's just not going that good for the quarterback. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't love any of them and they go out and get someone if no one blows them away at tight end 3. But Jurasek would be the guy that I would bet on right now. Scott says, I think we have a good chance to take the division title again. It's all going to hang on McCarthy. That is absolutely true. The vibes around the NFC North are a little bit on the strange side, where it seems like Chicago's practices early under Ben Johnson are crazy. I mean, it's reminding me, the early reports are reminding me of Josh McDaniels, where the guy is awesome at the X's and O's. He's a good offensive coordinator. He's a good play caller, if not a great play caller. But when you put him in charge of a ton of people and he's got to run it the right way and relate to people and get the most out of his quarterback and all that, it sounds like that's not what's happening in Chicago. That doesn't mean you can check them completely off. Maybe all this will be worth it in the end, that he is taking a militant approach to the beginning of Chicago Bears training camp. But the Vikings have a good chance, yes, to win the division. This roster is really, really good. And when you get out there and you see them go to work and you go position by position, because often during the past, what you're doing at training camp is kind of watching the guy that is the biggest question, right? And so, yeah, I mean, we're looking at Jeff Okudah every play because that's a big question for this. And Kevin O'Connell, to one of my questions today, had a good answer on Jeff Okudah, that he really liked some of his physical play that he saw the other day in rerouting a wide receiver and being physical at that point in camp. Maybe he's a shade too physical when he kind of fell on Justin Jefferson. But, you know, Okudah has been one of those guys that's made a first impression, but we're going to watch him. There's not that many guys that we're trying to watch on a given play and say like, oh, well, he's going to be the weak link, or is it going to be this other guy? When the pads come on, we're going to take a closer look at Donovan Jackson, but even the rest of the offensive line is pretty proven so far. There's so many quality players that in this training camp, it's kind of all about McCarthy too, and Will Reichard and the punting competition and punt returners and stuff. But it ends up being a lot about the quarterback and what he did every day, because all these other positions are pretty much set. And then we're looking a lot at the depth. But can they win the division? Definitely. They can absolutely win the division. Red Bruno wants Tyler Huntley or bust as QB2. Brosmer will be QB3 and ripping the practice squad guy. I'm curious about Tyler Huntley. So I haven't really wanted to go there too much with the other potential options, because all backup quarterback options are bad. And there's just not too many guys who you could say, let's go sign and he'll be great. Tyler Huntley has a career 79 quarterback rating and gets sacked on 8.5% of his dropbacks and is 5-9 in his career. So, I mean, I don't know about that. I don't know if that's a better option than just waiting to see with Sam Howell, but Max Brosmer's got a chance. Max Brosmer has definitely got a chance where he gets in there and just looks in control. And I think with Brosmer, one of the things that we didn't really think about as much as the season was going on with the Gophers is that team wasn't all that great offensively. It's not like they had some sort of crazy wide receivers. It's not like they had an amazing running game or anything. I mean, they just were a pretty mediocre average team, and Brosmer operated that offense really, really effectively for the Gophers last year. And that's what you see here, is that he just looks like he knows where he's supposed to go with the ball. And that might help him quite a bit. Daniel says JJ McCarthy has that everyone likes him vibe. Yeah, I think that's right. What he has to me is a genuine vibe. Sometimes what you see is quarterbacks have been told by coaches since they were however many years old, maybe their dad or whatever, this is how you be a real leader. And they go out there and it's not really genuine, and they're just trying to put on a show, and they're trying to let all the coaches know and their teammates, I'm the leader guy, that kind of thing. I think there is a natural element to JJ McCarthy's personality. And it's one of those small things. And Ryan Kelly was talking about the other day. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show last night, but Ryan Kelly was talking about Phillip Rivers and Andrew Luck, comparing him to those types of personalities. And I understood what he meant. Obviously, Andrew Luck is a once in a generation prospect and a super unique person. Phillip Rivers is more of riverboat gambler, kind of, North Carolina State. Here I come, just going to throw it up there, make a play kind of thing. How do you like that accent? That was kind of Texas more than South Carolina or North Carolina. Sorry, I offended everyone in the Southeast, but you know what I mean. Rivers had that gunslinger type of attitude where I thought that Andrew Luck was more on the super cerebral, brilliant kind of side. But I get it as far as in control and command, and everybody's following him. Everybody is going with him. And Aaron Jones said something yesterday just about how even when they were going through the walkthrough, he's saying, let's go back to the huddle, hustle it up, get in here, that kind of thing. I don't think he's forcing it. And I don't see him forcing it. I don't see him making the big catch about him by jumping around like a crazy person, but he is going down there to be the first to dap everybody up, then get back to the huddle. It's one of those know it when you see it kind of things. Like it's just this looks natural to me. This looks like how it should be for somebody who is leading a franchise. And everybody tends to pick up on that from JJ McCarthy. There is no way that you would walk out onto that practice field and wonder who QB1 was, wonder who the franchise guy, the first round pick. You would not wonder. If you had no idea who played on this football team and you went and sat in those stands in the sun and you looked down and watched about 5 minutes of practice, you would know exactly who the guy was. And that's what I think these veterans are bringing up with JJ McCarthy. And that's what you see translate to the field. Because if he had all this stuff, all this natural charisma, natural leadership, and he went out and threw it 50 miles over their heads and didn't have any confidence throwing the football, well, none of that would matter. But it connects. It connects to the actual performance. Evan says, is this a kind of prove it year for Pace with Ginkle playing linebacker and him getting smoked in some games last year, and how we talked about that maybe the Vikings could draft a linebacker this year? Well, we are definitely not talking about what the Vikings are drafting next year. That is a gazillion miles out of my mind at the moment. Draft season cannot stay far enough away from me right now. But I get your point. I'm half kidding, but real football in front of me is so much better than draft season. With Ivan Pace, I believe he is going to be a restricted free agent. So that means that the Vikings have the ability to tender an offer to him and keep him, unless somebody comes in and makes their offer. And then, there's a bunch of different things that can happen there, but I would assume that the Vikings would just keep him. Is Ivan Pace a perfect player? No, but Ivan Pace is the exact kind of player that Brian Flores knows how to use. And I think what this year will do is it will allow Ivan Pace to be much more of himself and not so much trying to be a complete all around every single play linebacker. So think about it this way. If they used Ivan Pace, for example, on first down, and they have him in the middle, and you've got Van Ginkel and Grenard, and your typical, here's Hargrave, here's Jonathan Allen, here's Harrison Phillips, and there's 5 along the D line, and there's 2 linebackers. It's a real 3-4 base to start on a first down, and Pace shoots a gap and makes a tackle. So now you got second down and long. Okay, here comes a change. Dallas Turner is on the field. Van Ginkel moves back to linebacker. Somebody's going to rush the passer on 2nd and 13 from over here or over there or whatever, right? Or, you can fire Ivan Pace through on a blitz. Also might just be, hey, this guy is tired. Now take him out, put somebody else in. Eric Wilson come in. They've just got more options. I think what Brian Flores did over these first 2 years is that he made lemonade out of lemons. He took everything that he had. He threw it in a pot and he made a defense. And it was certainly helped by getting a great season out of Van Ginkel. Cashman has just been a beast for them. All that helps. But there were some pieces where he had to kind of, all right, just squeeze as much as I can out of that lemon, just get as much as I can, just, put this puzzle piece in there to just mix as many metaphors as possible. And this year, I don't think he has to do that a whole lot. I think he actually has more options than he even needs, which means we're going to see a lot of different personnel. Some of it will include Ivan Pace. I don't think all of it will. But he's a good football player. When it comes to the contract stuff, if you start there, like, he's good, he's got value, he can do a lot of things that make a difference. Artie's not perfect, but you're keeping him. But if his RFA tender is the biggest question for next offseason, because I don't think under pressure would be the right way to put it. Like, if anyone plays horribly, then they're under pressure. If he's exactly what he was the last 2 years, he's definitely a part of the future of this team. First name, last name says, I'm really hoping the Ben Johnson hire winds up hurting both the Lions and the Bears. That would be nice. Yes, it would. And that goes to the question earlier about, can they win the division, the Vikings? Of course they can, because you could see a scenario where the Packers are just okay. They're just kind of the Packers of last year, maybe a little bit better here, maybe a little bit worse there. And they're a 10-win team, a 9-win team. And where the Lions are less dominant because of their offensive line, big deal. And they lose their offensive coordinator, but the guy turns out to be a lunatic. And we have seen this. I mean, Ben Johnson, if you were advising him today, you're like, you gotta relax. You gotta take it back a notch. I know what you're trying to do here. I know you're trying to be, what is it Dumb and Dumber where he says Billy Badass? Like, I know you're trying to be this, hey, I'm the guy in charge here, and I'm going to whip this team into shape. They weren't hard enough on them last year. And this is kind of what happens if somebody else was a little too lax. Then the next guy comes in and he's a little too crazy. Kind of how it did actually work for the Vikings, where they went from the most anti-culture guy to the most culture guy, and it worked. But it doesn't always, if you're great at calling plays, but you're not good at relaying what you need from these guys and how to practice with them effectively, and just pulling them out of drills rather than, it is practice, not a game. Talking about practice. This is what you do. You make a mistake, you try it again, you go back out there. They shouldn't be. This is why coaches don't like when reporters keep stats about how many completions and yards and everything else someone threw for, because it's practice. And then, some of the weird excuses like, no, we actually wanted to get him under pressure. Like, huh? I don't think that's something that you want to do in practice. I don't know. It's been weird. It has been weird. Ray says, what are the chances you think that Minnesota pursues Noah Fant or Christian Wilkins? I think the chances are very high that a lot of YouTube channels make videos about why the Vikings should go for those players that are wasting their time. That's a thought right now. I could be wrong. But I know any player who comes available, it's like, should we get him? As of right now, the Vikings have good defensive line depth, and I don't see a reason to go for a player who seems to have a very, very serious injury, but that would have to be up to them. They would have to see what it looked like. I also don't think, and no one ever kind of flips this around and goes, why would Christian Wilkins come here? They have Allen and Hargrave and Phillips. He would want to play, wouldn't he? So I don't know. I mean, yeah, you should be looking at every possible option to improve, but I don't really see a fit there, and it seems risky. Noah Fant, when a team releases a player at this time of year, right before training camp, that is suspicious to me. Again, why would a tight end come to a team that has two tight ends who are really good already? So I'm thinking that these aren't going to happen, but you never know. This team is in a spot where it should add as much talent as it possibly can. The Wilkins thing is just very risky, with whatever injury caused the Raiders to go as far as canceling his guarantees, and now they're going to have to fight that out with a grievance and everything else. Alexander says, have you noticed any surprises in terms of position groupings on the field? Are they running 2 tight end sets more? Too early to tell. Definitely too early to tell. They're going to run 2 tight ends. I mean, Josh Oliver's a really good player. Josh Oliver is one of those guys. This is why I'm going to tell you guys the truth. There's a lot of people in media, and maybe someday I'll be hypocritical on this. I don't know. But there's a lot of people in media who want to cover all the teams and be national. National used to kind of mean something. I don't know if it still does. But the thing that I really like about covering one team, and that I've always liked, and why I've continued to do this covering the team, is because of guys like Josh Metellus and Josh Oliver, where you're like, a reporter who tries to cover 32 teams is never going to know how good at football these guys are and how valuable they are. And Josh Oliver catches everything, blocks the heck out of people. He's just a really good player. I think they will, especially if Jordan Addison is suspended for 3 games, maybe it gets knocked down to 2 games. They're going to use a lot of Josh Oliver and TJ Hawkinson because TJ Hawkinson basically becomes the slot wide receiver. And then you have your X and your Y, and then he kind of becomes your Z, to use the old Madden letters, and Josh Oliver becomes the tight end. That's a pretty good scenario for an offense because Hawkinson, and I talked to him about this a few years ago. He said that, who was it? Was it Julian Edelman? One of those guys who played in Detroit. There was a former Patriots receiver who was a slot guy that played. I don't think it was Edelman who played in Detroit. Maybe it was, for a year, where he said that they worked together on routes out of the slot for Hawkinson to learn better how to understand getting open in the slot, because it's a completely different position from playing a traditional inline or playing outside. And that's a good scenario for them. So, yeah, I mean, I've seen them out there with the 12 personnel. CJ Ham gets out there, catches something out of the back field every once in a while. But, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a situation where in the first few days of training camp, they're going to show all their cards. That's kind of, I was talking about earlier of what they're going to do. I think we can use our just, common sense here to figure out Josh Oliver is going to be on the field quite a bit. Susan says, reason I'm concerned about Sam Howell is a comment I read about his lack of preparation in a game where he subbed for Geno last year for the Seahawks. Not just played badly, but not prepared. I'd be curious about if you saw that as part of a report, because I thought that watching the game, and I know that I've mentioned it on the show, that it worried me as well for him and his career as a backup quarterback, because the number one thing is being prepared and being ready to come in any game. And he did not look like it. And he doesn't look like he's really seeing it here in the first few days of practice. And of course, I have to add in the caveat that he's playing the first team defense. This first team defense is freaking awesome. There is so many good players on this first team defense that it's causing problems for Sam Howell. What I would like to see from him is just give it a shot anyway, because when this was the issue with Kellen Mond, the ball just wouldn't come out. And you just can't take sacks in a practice. And obviously they're not hitting him to the ground, but just the ball's not coming out, or he's scrambling or just holding on to it. And so everyone is just out there running around like a bunch of children in a field. Like, you want this to look like it has some meaning to the guys and see who, can go up and make a play for the depth wide receivers. There was one throw in Rondale Moore's direction today. One throw. The guy went through a whole practice and got one throw. And unfortunately, he kind of collided with, I think it was Jay Ward, and went down a little bit. Seemed to be okay. But, I mean, if you're Rondale Moore, you're like, I just ran 8 miles today out here for one pass my way to show that I should be on the first team. That's pretty tough. Ja Vision says, any Zemiah Vaughn sightings? He was out there today. Yep, he's out there today. I mean, these guys are getting toasted on the second team. It's tough. It's really tough when you're the second team corners and you're going up against, and I know Naylor's not on the same level of Jordan Addison, but Jordan Addison just ruins these people. And TJ Hawkinson and, Lucky Jackson was open today. But Vaughn, he's a guy that when the pads come on, I really want to watch closely to see how he performs with his length and his movement ability. Does he make some plays on the football? We haven't seen plays on the football from Vaughn so far in camp where we did in mini camp. course, that's where he was going up against the backup quarterbacks, maybe a little easier to do. But he stands out. He definitely stands out. And here's what we can pick up on, though, because I know I've said this kind of a lot about different guys. Like, well, hard to say on this guy yet. We're going to have to wait and see on that guy. Snap counts we can see from the early part, and he's gotten a lot of them. That's the biggest thing that they show us early on, is this is how they want it to go. So that's why I come in every day with kind of snap count notes to say, all right, hey, Bo Richter was kind of the guy today. So they must like what they see a little bit enough to have him, or they want to give that a chance along with Gabe Murphy, which initially was my expectation. But on the first day, they had Tyler Batty out there a little more. I think Richter is a guy for this team, but he just seems like a Flores guy to me. It's not the perfect size. He's got really good athleticism, seems to be a high intelligence player. Has a little juice to him, kind of an underdog vibe, like that kind of guy. That's what Josh Metellus is. That kind of guy. Todd says, do you know how long Flores is under contract for? Well, I believe my friend Ben Gessling of the Star Tribune reported that his contract is up after this year, and they have signed everybody else to contract extensions. But here's how I feel about the Flores contract discussion. What I would love to do is I would love to take the Flores contract discussion and put it in a little box and close the box and lock the key and just put the key in my pocket. And I'll set it over here and we'll talk about it when we need to. And I'll keep the key and I'll keep the box. And then when it is time to have that discussion, then I will take it out of the box and we'll talk about it. Because sometimes I think we just love to talk about anything that might have a little bit of juice, like somebody's contract situation. And maybe it's been my downfall on the show of always saying, this Kwesi thing, it's probably not crazy. They'll probably get it done. And then they do. KOC probably not getting traded. Justin Jefferson probably not getting traded. Josh Metellus, they'll probably get it worked out. It's a little tricky. They'll take care of it. They'll get it done. And all of those things have come to fruition. I tend to think that the same thing will be the case with Brian Flores. The only thing about why I want to put it in a box and lock the key and put it away is I don't know how the defense is going to play this year. I think they're going to be great. And I think Flores is going to be great. And I think when we get to a certain point, the Vikings will just figure something out with him. And that could even be next week. Who knows? And then they'll sign him and it will be good to go. And there you go. Off we go. When it's time to talk about it, then we'll talk about it. Until then, way too much interesting stuff happening on the field. I'm done with all contract discussions for now. The offseason is over. Let's deal with all that stuff later. Let's talk about freaking Zamaya Vaughn's snap counts. All right, let's go. Or the punters. I actually did see punting today. Son of Beavers. I know that you guys wanted to hear it. Now, can I stand there on the sideline and tell you if Oscar Chapman is going to win the punting battle based on the 3 punts that I saw from him today? Yes. The answer is yes. He's going to. No, I'm just kidding. But there were punts. And I saw Matt Daniels today, and I did think about saying, like, hey, when do we get to hear about this punt battle? He's going to talk to the media for the first time next week. So I will bring back, and I'll try to remember to do this just for you guys. Whatever he says, I'll bring the audio into the show for next week when we actually get to have that discussion about where the punters are at. It's going to be decided in the real games. In the real games, that's when we start to see how they punt under the pressure, because anybody can punt in practice. You're trying, but there's no pressure. Like, you're trying to give them some sort of simulation, but there's no real pressure. So they could just punt it wherever. When there's real dudes out there running at you and you got to catch the ball in front of 65,000 people who are going to be there for the first Vikings preseason game, it's just a little different. And if Oscar Chapman crushes it, then he's got a chance. But the one part of Ryan Wright's game that I don't think is replaceable is catching that football and putting it down for Will Reichard. Reichard was really good last year outside of, the game where he got injured, but overall really, really good kicker. That chemistry, it's very important. A few yards of, what are we talking if you change punters to someone unproven, by the way? I just don't see it happening. How many minutes can I talk about the punt competition? Probably more than that. Rascal Lover says backup center more of a depth concern than any other position. Let's see. More than any other position? I think that the number one position as far as depth goes is cornerback to talk about, because every position at corner has the same feeling. And that feeling is maybe this guy could be good. Maybe Dwight McGlothern can be good. We saw it in training camp last year, but we don't know for sure. And maybe Mekhi Blackman or Jeff Okudah will be good, but we don't know for sure because Okudah hasn't been good and Mekhi Blackman hasn't played since last year. That would be more of a concern to me, because that position, if you don't cover well for one guy, the other team will attack the heck out of him, because you know that it's not going to be Byron Murphy, who the other team goes after all the time after leading all corners in interceptions. It's going to be whoever the weak link is. And the other thing is, maybe, let's see. I'm trying to think of, is there one that has more of a concern than center? Is it wide receiver? Because as of this moment, Lucky Jackson, again, love the story, love the grind of that guy and the fact that he's still here, but doesn't have NFL catches. Rondale Moore signed for $2 million. Ty Felton's a third-round draft pick. It might be wide receiver and corner a little bit more than center. There aren't really any teams in the NFL who can say, our backup center is awesome. I don't know what you guys are talking about. Most backup centers are a 7th-round draft pick who a team has developed, and Michael Juergens knows the offense. Could he go in there and be Ryan Kelly? Oh, gosh, no. But also, could anybody go in and be anybody? The New England Patriots are starting Garrett Bradbury, and we know Bradbury's shortcomings, and they felt great about that sign. They were like, oh, this is an upgrade for us. That's how hard center is to find in the NFL. There just are not a lot of those really good centers, even to start, much less guys who are backups. So yes, it is a concern, but there's never been a team. Okay, let me take this back. Mason Cole was pretty good. That was the only time I ever thought that the backup center was decent. That was the only time. Shout out to Austin Schlottman. He actually had a couple games where he played pretty well, but there's just not a lot of guys who you can really trust there. It's something that in the preseason games for offensive linemen, we try at camp, but the preseason games for those backup linemen, they're going to tell a pretty good story. So with Logan Brown, Walter Rouse, how does Juergens look? That's where, when we do our preseason previews, that's where we're really going to ramp it up. Sparky says, what do you think of the recent hate on JJ by Colin Cowherd, saying he sucked in the fourth quarter? To me, intangibles like Brady in the leadership factor. I think that Colin Cowherd, one, is a huge Sam Darnold guy. I know that about Colin. He's a huge, huge Sam Darnold guy. And he, USC, he loved what he did last year. Loved that Sam Darnold story. And Cowherd last year was banging the drum all year long for Sam Darnold, the Minnesota Vikings. And of course, as he's doing that, I never got any questions about what Colin Cowherd was saying on his show. I also know that Colin, over his career, and I've read articles with him and stuff like that. Just when I was coming up, starting in the business, whatever number of years ago, 15 years ago, I talked with some program directors and other talk hosts, and they would say, Colin Cowherd is a guy to really study how he does his job. So I learned a lot about Colin Cowherd, and one of his things is just planting flags. And when your job is to come up with takes and opinions and then follow them along the way, and that's part of your shtick, it's part of what you do as your entertainment product, he's doing it right by picking a side on JJ McCarthy, and then he's just going to ride it from there. And then eventually he might have to say he's wrong about it. But the one thing about saying that you're not into a quarterback is that it's like if you say, I think Dak Prescott stinks. Well, I mean, if he loses in the playoffs, even if he led the number one offense all year long, you'd be like, see, I was right. Only one quarterback goes and wins the Super Bowl. Only two make it. So if you plant your flag on the wrong side of a quarterback or a negative side of a quarterback, I mean, you got a pretty darn good chance of being right, especially since either Allen or Mahomes or Jackson are the ones that are going to the Super Bowl this year, right? So if you said, I'm not a Trevor Lawrence guy, I don't believe in him, like, well, good chance you're going to be right. You could say that about most people. But it's a strategy, and that's what he does. Like, that's what those shows are. This show is different. This show gets sunburn and sunscreen in my eyes today because I sprayed it on my face and then the sweat came down into my eyes as I was watching practice. So I started the show, like maybe you saw me, I'm like blinking and my nose was kind of, running a little bit trying to get the sunscreen out of my eyes. But that's what I do. I go out and cover this team and talk to the players and the coaches and things like that. So I don't plant flags on guys and say, I love JJ McCarthy and I'll defend him to the death, or I hate JJ McCarthy and he'll never be good. What I do is I go to the practice, I watch it, I bring you guys back the information. He makes more money doing what he does. I don't know if I could be that guy. I don't know if I could be that guy because I think the problem is I've covered way too much of this stuff over the years and you never really know where it's going to go. But if you're the person that admits that you don't really know how it's going to go, and we can only look at evidence and data, and every practice for McCarthy's a data point. So every day I get maybe a little more confident that there's going to be 11 wins or a little more confident that McCarthy's going to work out. But if you listen to me during draft season, I was like, I don't know. I got some questions. I mean, why didn't they throw the ball? And it doesn't look like, he's all that big of a frame. And then he arrived and I saw him. I was like, oh, he's actually bigger than I thought. So I just changed my mind. If you're that guy and you're if you do that show, you don't change your mind. You just ignore that information and stick with what you first said. That's just not me. Anyway, so that's you sent me down a rabbit hole there. But I do think that it's really a fun part of the job for me to try to gather as much information as I can and then try to get it right for you guys. So Stephanie says Skull Doc, an orthopedic doctor and a longtime Purple Insider guy. So shout out to him. Did a couple of posts explaining why Wilkins' injury and why the decision not to operate was not good because it is not an injury that heals without surgery. So that could eliminate a lot of all of this conversation about Christian Wilkins if he just has to get surgery and then he's out for a really long time. Maybe he'll sign with somebody, but teams just don't get rid of $100 million players for the heck of it. They usually have to have a serious reason to do it. Evan, can we expect Addison's suspension to come any day now, or is it something we're going to be waiting on? The league gave out other suspensions. Kind of surprised we haven't heard yet. In this one, nobody knows. Evan, it will just arrive on our doorstep, and when it's here, it's here. It doesn't have to. I was almost saying like it has to come before the season starts, right? I guess not. And I don't know what Roger Goodell's desk looks like. If it's got all these different suspensions, 3 games here, 2 games here, 1 game. I don't know. I don't know how many other guys are up for suspension. You would think that this would be coming fairly soon. I'm going to throw out there any day now. Maybe it's a Friday news dump. Oh, Danny Amendola was the one that worked with TJ Hawkinson. Yes, you are correct. It was Danny Amendola. Yep, that's right. All right. Let me continue to scroll here. You guys, I get behind sometimes when I get down a big rabbit hole. Susan read about Sam Howell in a Seattle report. It just fit with exactly what it looked like with Sam Howell. There was a minute there where I was excited about Sam Howell when he was in Washington, probably a 7-week stretch where he was pretty good. And after that, it went really poorly. And then when he got his one chance, it also went really poorly. I'm not sure how excited they were to have him as the backup quarterback here, or if it was just kind of the best option, or maybe they thought they were going to get Carson Wentz and that hasn't or did not come to fruition, or somebody else that they were holding out for and they signed elsewhere, like Daniel Jones was one of them. But at the moment, this is not going particularly well. There is several more weeks of, of training camp. And I was reminded by someone the other day about Case Keenum and just Case Keenum starting the 2017 camp as a new quarterback in the system. And his first couple weeks were so bad that Mike Zimmer said, hey, he's competing with Taylor Heineke. And it didn't click until the first preseason game. So let's give him until then to start making this assessment. But you'd like to see these second and third wide receivers get a chance to get the ball. Chris says Ty is the X factor. Ty Felton. He needs to be productive at least the first third of the season. I don't know if he needs to be, because last year they missed Addison a little bit and they were able to make up for it and still have a good offense in those first few weeks where Addison was out and then he came back. It wasn't until Green Bay that he came back and was really good after getting hurt week 1, right? Is that how it went? That he came back, Green Bay, scored a touchdown early on in that game, and they were good with Naylor. They were good with Jefferson and they didn't even have Hawkinson either. So using Josh Oliver, using Aaron Jones out of the backfield. I wouldn't go as far as to call Ty Felton the X factor. I would say it would be nice if Felton was able to come in and be something right away. If he could run jet sweeps, if he could catch some quick passes, the occasional deep shot or something. For Felton, this to me is still a development year. It's a positive for him to get into a practice with the first team at all. To take 3 reps or 4 reps today and be the only other guy that went in with Lucky Jackson, like that's good for Ty Felton. It says good things about him, because if he wasn't playing well, they would have him pasted to the bench and he would be with the undrafted guys that aren't getting any opportunity. So it gives you at least somewhat of a sense that they like what they see. But we don't have to rush this with Felton. I think there will be some development with him coming from Maryland, not exactly in Alabama when it comes to the passing game. And there's going to be still development. But I think the early signs on Felton are good. I was a little skeptical coming out of minicamp of just how far he was going to get. And it looks like he's growing and developing. But as of right now, Lucky Jackson, we'll just see on Rondale Moore. I thought Rondale Moore looked really good in terms of his speed over the first couple of days. But one of those things about a player like Rondale Moore is you sign him and you see him in a certain role and you go, all right, well, if he is this, swing pass kind of guy or, slant type of player that you get the ball into his hands, he can make a play. But then all of a sudden, somebody like Justin Jefferson goes down or Jordan Addison gets suspended. And if you're not happy with him as a complete wide receiver, then you're not going to go in that direction. And maybe you end up with Lucky Jackson instead, which I think is possible. Moore has looked good to me in terms of just how he's moving. But the opportunity is going to have to play out that he's going to have to make his own opportunity with the first team where he shows that he can do more than just be that quick type of player out of the backfield and that he can be a complete wide receiver. Because the thing I know about Lucky Jackson is that he's going to be in the right spot. Lucky Jackson will be in the right spot. He's going to run the right route at the right depth. And that's why you use him throughout this practice today with JJ McCarthy. It's an important practice. They wanted to ramp it up. So you're like, all right, let's go with the guy that we trust to be in the right spot. So now someone like Rondale Moore and Ty Felton, they've got to prove that they can do the same thing as Lucky Jackson. First name, last name says, I wonder if there's a chance that Brosmer leaps Howell and starts running the second team, and then we could just grab a vet closer to cuts. If I'm looking for that, it would probably be Brett Rippon, because Rippon has so much more, and Rippon was fine today. It just, it stands out when the undrafted free agent Brosmer hits 2 really nice passes at the end of practice, but Rippon got the ball out and he got it to people running the third team. I imagine if they were that frustrated, if they got to a point where they just couldn't take it anymore, that they would have Brett Rippon be the guy who would jump in there. Rob says, don't know about Howell's prep, but in that Seahawks game, the whole interior O-line went down injured during the game. Howell had no chance. I watched the game. I saw the game. it looked like he's looked in practice, like he didn't know where to go with the football. I get it. People get hurt. Offensive lines get hurt. They get dominated. I saw the game. I know how bad it was with their offensive line. Seattle had a horrible offensive line anyway, but you can't just do nothing, which is what happened there. And it's what's happened in these practices. And if you go back after the only section of his career so far that has been any good is 7 games that are kind of jammed in the middle of a very bad start and a very bad finish in Washington. I think I'm getting impatient with the situation. It doesn't mean he can't be a fine backup quarterback. It's just when you're watching a practice and McCarthy is in there and he's getting guys the football and he's running plays and he's throwing it on time, and then the backup comes in and the whole thing comes to a screeching halt. It's like, that's not how it's supposed to look. So I think he's got next week and probably into a preseason game to show that he can be more than this tough start and more than that Seattle game. But I've also seen enough football over the years to know when a quarterback looks unprepared in a game. And I definitely think that was for Sam Howell in Seattle last year. Evan says, so the depth chart it still is what it is. It didn't change today. It's still Howell's the backup. I just think that after these 4 days, if there was zero pressure on Sam Howell, or maybe it was a 2 out of 10 after minicamp, well, now I think it's like a 5 or a 6. And he's got this week to get going. And I'll change as the information changes, as always. I'm not planting a flag on Howell. Don't do that. I'm just telling you how it's been and what I've seen from his career. There's not a whole lot of great to work with here. And there's not a whole lot of great backup quarterback options other than him either. Steve says sort of a contract year for Addison. We have a decision to make on his 5th-year option, and technically he's eligible for an extension. Oh, talking about, the big contract decisions for next year. I think with Addison, if he plays like he's played the last couple years and there's no other issues, then that should be a pretty easy choice to put the 5th-year option. Yes, they can negotiate an extension after next year. I don't know if that's a guy that you're going to do that with, or if you're going to take it until the last summer before he's eligible. I would suspect that they would do that, but maybe you could get a deal. Like that's what they got with Darisaw. I'm not sure how that's going to play out. That's very far down the road. But Addison is under contract for next year, and then it's a 5th-year option for the following year. So to me, I don't look at that as big contract things that are happening, because if he's good, they're going to use the 5th-year option on him hands down if there's no issues. So I don't look at it like, oh, that's a big, thing that they could, that they have looming over them for next year with contracts. I think everything is off the table. I mean, if we're only talking about an RFA and pace and we're only talking about a 5th-year option, that means you're in pretty good shape with the contracts across the board. Rob says, didn't the Vikes have a few chats with Tannehill? Probably a contingency plan. They may have just reached out to him. I haven't seen any reports that he was actually interested in becoming a Minnesota Viking or playing. I mean, maybe if there was a chance to be a starter somewhere that he would do it, but I have not seen anything that says, oh, Ryan Tannehill wants to come back. I don't even know what kind of shape Ryan Tannehill is in, or if that's something that they want to do. Mr. Mayor, why does the second team defense predominantly play against the first team offense and vice versa? Wouldn't you want them to play good on good? They will during this period of ramping up. I think that the main idea is to get the first team offense opportunities and to maybe keep Brian Flores from sending the house all the time. I did ask Wes Phillips, maybe I can find this article for you. It's hard to do on the fly here. Maybe I can find the article I wrote last year about JJ McCarthy taking reps versus the ones. Okay, I did find it. Can I screen share here with you guys? Let's read my own work that I don't remember from last year. Here we go. So I wrote an article about this. Can you guys see it? Let me make it big. Get rid of that. Look at that. Why is JJ McCarthy facing the first team defense? I wrote this last year, and it is new to me because I don't remember it. Let's see. So here's my little setup here. Let me get to the quotes and see what he said. Okay. Wes Phillips said, I think it puts you in some situations where you play really in the NFL against some muddy pockets, sometimes where you might have to escape, sometimes where you might have to find the check down, maybe not in rhythm. So last year they were doing it with McCarthy to get him starting to feel what an NFL pocket is like. Now, I don't know how that would apply to this year. Let me see. The processing might have to speed up a little bit, and hopefully you're in there with the first group and then things slow down a little bit. So I guess this doesn't really give us an answer. Oh, here we go. This might be the answer. This might be the answer here. Flores might not make all of his calls with the twos that he might with the ones. Okay, I think that reveals our investigation is that you probably want to start training camp. They will be ones versus ones. I promise you that. But you want to start training camp with Brian Flores not giving all the calls against the first team offense to make sure that they're executing and that he's not trying to win the practice by throwing Van Ginkel and Mattelis, because you're not going to face this defense all the time in the NFL. So you want to be able to simulate, at least to start, and get things rolling, not facing the whole defense, and then you get going from there. That would be my guess based on my own reporting from last year. That makes more sense because last year it made sense with McCarthy. Like, hey, let's get him acclimated to what it's like to play some first teamers. But here you're just trying to click in with the offense and get them to be, confident and on the same page. Son of a Beavers, do you think that if the special team struggles this season, Matt Daniels could end up on the hot seat? I don't. I think that they like Matt Daniels as a part of this coaching staff. It's one of the best coaching staffs in the league. They've won a lot of football games. You just might not want to overly nitpick whether the punter got enough punts inside the 10 or not and pin that on the special teams coordinator. I also think that Kevin O'Connell just doesn't really, look, there's going to be a lot to be decided with this because of the kick return. And if they struggle mightily with the kick and punt returns, I suppose that's possible, but Matt Daniels' job just goes so much deeper than what their yards per punt return is. I think if Kevin O'Connell had his way, I think they would just wait for a fair catch on every single punt return. And I think that they would let every single kick return go out of the back of the end zone, and he would let his quarterback decide football games and not special teams. That's the feeling I've always gotten from Kevin O'Connell, that he doesn't like the volatility of the kick and punt returning, because Daniels had some ideas that he had tossed out there about kickoffs and things like that in maybe 2022. And they did a few of them, but then they backed off them. When you're the head coach who believes in your offense and believes in your defense, you want to mitigate your special teams. You don't want, so think about this. Anybody know who had the most kick returns in the league last year? I'll give you 3 seconds. It was the Carolina Panthers, because their defense was terrible and they knew that they could not score. Or they knew, early on they couldn't score, and they knew that they couldn't stop anyone. So they had to find other ways to score, which, hey, let's try to get a kick return. But if you're the Vikings and you're playing from ahead, I think that it's not that it doesn't matter to them. Obviously, any phase of the game is going to matter a lot to a head coach. It's just part of Matt Daniels' job might be risk mitigation. What play probably drove him the most crazy? Think about that Philadelphia return from Brandon Powell where he fumbled. They're about to get the ball back. Maybe, I think in that game they could have gone ahead. They fumble. It changes the whole game. I think he hates that. Matt Daniels is a great player developer. These undrafted free agents, these young guys, I think he's really, really good at building on their skill sets. And he's also in charge of the turnovers, which have been fantastic for this team. He also played in the secondary in the NFL, not just special teams, little bit, only a handful of snaps, but that was his thing, is, playing in the secondary when he was in the NFL. And so he's been a major part of the teaching of the philosophy of how you turn the ball over, the technique of how you take the ball away. And they were great at it last year. So they like Matt Daniels on a lot of different levels. I think he's really good for the kicker. I think he's really, really good for the kicker, truly. That his approach to handling the kicker is a smart one. it's more than just did they give up X number of yards on returns and things like that. Hamza says, assuming Addison stays out of trouble and continues to perform, would you prioritize extending him to build around JJ and Jefferson? I would honestly get rid of Hawkinson before Addison. I'm just not doing this. I'm just not doing off-season 2026. They're practicing today with a team that can really win. I mean, you're getting rid of players. What are we doing here? I'm not what are we doing? Why are we getting rid of players? Why are we talking about RFAs? What are we doing? They're practicing. This team is really good. We don't have to do this. Let's figure out what happens here Monday when in pads first. And then we'll just figure out who they're getting rid of next year as we go along. So oh man. I mean, I know you guys love the front office stuff, but that's just a little too far. Take it, put it in the box, close up the key. We'll open that later. Let's see if TJ Hawkinson has a good year. From what I've seen so far, this is where I can connect it to what's going on at training camp is TJ Hawkinson and JJ McCarthy look like they're clicking. And they really did on a nice play today where he layered the ball in there into the intermediate area of the field. This Vikings offense in the intermediate, that 10 to 20 yards, is deadly. That's what KOC does. That's his thing. We love deep shots. Deep shots are phenomenal. 15 to 25 yards. That's where Kevin O'Connell has made all of his bones in the NFL. And TJ Hawkinson is one of the rare tight ends who can get into that space and make catches and make plays. And I think he's got a chance to have a really big year with JJ McCarthy. Echo Warrior says, what's the depth chart look like behind Cashman and Pace and King? Don't forget Eric Wilson. Eric Wilson is the guy. He's the backup for either Cashman or Pace. And then we'll see after that. Kobe King looks to me like he is ahead, but Brian Asamoah was mixing in a little bit today. Sometimes it can be hard to tell second or third team because they'll be mixed with some guys that I would consider to be third teamers or second teamers. But Eric Wilson is one of those signings that on the day that they do it, and thank you so much for the super chat, by the way, Echo Warrior, really, really appreciate that. Eric Wilson's one of those guys. On the day they sign him, you go, oh, that's nice. Oh, I remember that guy. And then someone gets banged up for 3 weeks and Eric Wilson fills in and does great. And you go, oh yeah, that's why I like that guy. Stephanie says, fun to see Chris Carter there. Is he usually at training camp? Sometimes I think once a year I'll see, or a couple times a year, Chris Carter will be out there. Still very much involved. A lot of the alumni are, and they come out. John Randall's another guy that you see all the time when it comes to, around training camp and stuff. Every once in a while you see Carl Eller. That's pretty cool. Every once in a while you see Alan Page. And I have heard that the kids these days are using the word aura to describe everything. When I think of aura, I think of when Carl Eller or Alan Page walks into a Vikings practice and there's just kind of this, everybody stops. Like, that's Carl Eller and that's Alan Page. And Jim Marshall was the same way as well. And they've got a really nice number 70 for Jim Marshall, by the way, out there at training camp, a very thoughtful thing to do for the great Jim Marshall. But it's cool. It honestly is cool when you see, Paul Krause will be out there sometimes. Tommy Kramer will be out there. These are some of the great players, some of them in NFL history, like Chris Carter, and to have them kind of wandering around. Monday Night Football should mean Randy Moss as well. Will be probably at a practice or two. Usually the broadcast team flies in, I want to say maybe Thursday, and are there for a couple days, or Thursday or Friday, and they meet with the team and all that sort of stuff. So, Randy Moss being a part of that will be really special as well. Sean says, have you noticed the speed quality of Ben Urasek? Well, I don't think he's that kind of guy. I don't think that Ben Urasek is going to set any land speed records for tight ends, but he does kind of remind me of Johnny Munt. Like, he has that movement type and size type, and he seems to catch the ball when it comes his way. we just don't have any real information about the tight end 3 thing yet. Very curious to see when Gavin Bartholomew gets back. It's if he can get back next week and jump back in the fray, he won't have missed a whole heck of a lot because there haven't been that many throws that have gone his way. Miles says, what's your read on Okudah and his position in the secondary so far? Well, if the season started today, Jeff Okudah would start for this team. He has played a lot of football in his career, and he does have something that Brian Flores really likes, and that is aggressiveness, physicality, strength. He is a strong dude. He's big. He's lanky. He's got a lot of raw skill, but the size and the physicality and the tackling ability. I mean, they're not tackling people, but you can see the strength that Okudah has, and his history is as a very good tackler. He would start today. The question really is for Okudah, as these practices start to rack up one after the next, and we come in here and break down each one, he's going to be a big part of that conversation. If it's going pretty well for Okudah, who caught a nice break, not having to go up against Justin Jefferson every day, but if it's going really well for him, they might not change it, and they'll just leave it as it is, and he'll be the starter, but it will be in nickel packages. So it'll be like Shaq Griffin last year, where he's not on the field all the time, just some when they're in the nickel. If throughout camp they start to get the sense that, okay, now we know why it hasn't worked in some other places, whatever technical issues there might be, or maybe it's just stopping and starting, or whatever, holding, whatever it might be, and Mekhi Blackmon starts to play well, that could change pretty quickly. And I still think that they like Mekhi Blackmon, but the guy is coming back from an ACL injury and has to ramp up, and Okudah has more experience. So you set a pretty good bar with an experienced guy. Well, you've got to get over that. And O'Connell did praise Okudah, but he also said at the end of his comment to my question today about the secondary, he said, I'll be very interested to see how it plays out. So I think that's on the minds of the head coach, the defensive coordinator, is that position specifically and how it's going to work out. Let's see. Gary says, who has the oldest intro music of all of our content creators? Does it say, I thought, Matthew, did you mean you thought that I should shred? It's a good jam. I think it's a good jam, my intro. It's not really shredding. I've got some songs that are shredding, but that's just a good jam. I want everybody to like it. I have had it around for a long time, but I like it. I think it's synonymous with the show. What Miles says, what position do you feel is deeper, edge or receiver? Kind of the same sort of thing, where it's three guys that you really trust, and then, okay, let's see what happens. I guess I would go wide receiver because Rondale Moore's played in the league. Ty Felton's a fairly high draft pick, and Lucky Jackson's been around for a long time. The edge position with Richter and Gabe Murphy, these guys, Gabe Murphy played a little, Richter played on special teams. They haven't gotten in games other than that. So they're trusting that if anybody were to get hurt, although you still view Dallas Turner as a kind of depth or backup because they're forcing ways to get Dallas Turner in the field. If Van Ginkel or Grenard went down, Turner just starts and then they won't do that. It's not like you have to have that Turner role get filled, but I would probably go wide receiver. Steve, hand out neck rolls for people who want to talk about 2026 offseason. Hey, look, it is what we do here. And everything that happens this year will have a future. Here's what I'll do. Remember last year during the bye week where I said, guys, let's not worry about the future. This team's good. Like, let's just follow it week to week. And then I opened it up for 1 week and said, all right, this week during the bye, we get to talk about the future. Ask me anything about the future. We'll do that one of these nights where it's, 10 o'clock at night and we've been chatting about this, that, and the other thing forever. And I'll say, all right, after 9:30, ask me about the future. It's just, when someone comes in and talks about who's getting cut next offseason, let's just rein it in a little bit here. Let's see if they go 1-0 first. See how they get the pads on, and then we'll get there. How does Will Reichard look? Looked totally fine to me. today, made 5 out of 6, banged a 54-yarder home. Hope he's back to his form from pre-injury. I would imagine that this offseason had to have included some rest and recovery for Will Reichard. I think he just kicked a little bit too much when it came to last year, and he had an injury at Alabama, and just maybe a little bit overexertion there. And then he tried to fight through it. Probably shouldn't have done that. Like, don't be a hero as a kicker. Be a hero as a defensive tackle. Don't be a hero as a kicker. Son of Beaver says, have you noticed Keith Carter, the O-line coach, assistant O-line coach, Chris Cooper still the O-line coach. When we hired him, it seemed that players did not like playing for him, if I remember correctly. He did have some beefs with players in the past, and there were some reputation things, but this also might be just a bit of a product of we have too much information in the year 2025. I mean, we're talking about the assistant offensive line coach. So if you're getting hired to work for Kevin O'Connell, I don't think that certain types of coaching are going to go over all that well. Berating players, if you work for a different head coach, maybe you're much more into that type of style with how you coach. I would think that Kevin O'Connell would have a lot to do with that. Where it could be interesting is just the run game element. Are they going to be a little bit better and more detailed on the outside zone stuff? Because that was kind of where he was rooted. But I don't know about talking too much about or trying to reach too much out to the assistant O-line coach. I don't know that I've ever talked about an assistant O-line coach before. Let's see. Jared says, building the team is way more fun than actually playing the games. Just sim the season and let's sign some more players. There is truth to that, Jared. There is truth to that. Definitely. Truth to sometimes the season for people can be, agony to go from the week to week. The stress in the off season is fun because it has unlimited potential and ideas, and we can all play along at home. The difference between the off season and the front office stuff and the coaching stuff is you have no idea how to beat the Bears. I mean, neither do I. I couldn't go into the Vikings meeting and be like, all right, here are our 37 plays that are going to beat the Bears. I'm not qualified for that. I mean, I could give you some ideas and players to attack and different styles and things that I notice and things that we study on film and everything else. I could try my best, but I could not be in a meeting with Kevin O'Connell about the offensive game plan. I would look like a fool, and so would you. Now, the front office, you could go into a meeting with Kwesi Adofo-Mensah and talk about, because you have all the information. You have scouting reports from guys who, Lance Zierlein from NFL.com is no different than a guy who works for the Jets scouting department. And you could go in with overthecap.com, has almost the same information as the NFL. I've been told from people in the league it's reliable, so we use it. We got PFF data. We don't have all of it, but we got a lot of it. We could go through people's grades and sign them. And look, the last couple of years, we've probably all come up with guys that they've signed and been like, hey, I wanted that guy because I liked his PFF grade or I like this about him. A lot of that we feel like we can really do and get our hands on. What detail for Josh Oliver's, left foot is going to happen against the outside linebacker for the Bears. Now that's, it's a little bit harder. So, and I also think there's just so much pressure. There's so much pressure when it comes to the season, and all of you feel it, all of you feel it, because if you've been following this team for as long as many of you have, some of you up to 50 years or more, and some of you are relatively more new, but a lot of my audience is probably Randy Moss, at least having seen, him play. And then beyond that, you've gone through a lot. You've been kicked when you're down many times, and you've been knocked down when you're up many times with this franchise. And every single week is gripping the edge of the chair, clenching your fists, leaning into the TV. And it's just so much more stressful from week to week than the offseason where hope springs eternal. So I think that that's the difference. But I also think, here's what I love about it, is that all of you and we have these conversations about the front office stuff. and maybe I just recoil a little bit on a practice day like this about cutting, a key player next offseason. But when we do all the shows in the offseason, it's great that all of us are working with all this information and we could throw ideas back and forth at each other and debate things. And you got all the info, I got all the info, and we really make it a community conversation. So I think that's what's really fun about the front office stuff, is since we all can learn it all ourselves on our own with things that are out there, we can all play GM. And I enjoy that. Mike says, you're speaking on JJ's natural charisma and leadership. How does it compare to Kirk? I sense that he forced a lot of things and often felt unsure and lacked confidence. Kirk leaned into Kirk. The last couple years under Kevin O'Connell and really got to be himself so much more. And he won over the locker room by being himself. I think forced or uncomfortable would be right when he got here. I remember him saying when he got here that he was just trying to fit in with the team and do his job. And that's a hard position to be in, because they really need you to be the guy. They need you to be a dog. They need you to take over this franchise and say, this is mine now. And at the same time, you had Anthony Barr and Eric Kendricks and Harrison Smith and Stephon Diggs and Adam Thielen and Kyle Rudolph and all these guys who had been to the NFC Championship, where they're kind of saying, hey, we got here with Case Keenum. Like, just do your job. So I don't think they ever got off really on the right foot there and had no support whatsoever from the head coach, who never wanted him there. Then when the head coach wanted him there, or at least, supported him positively in the locker room, got him to stand up in front of the team and things like that, Kevin O'Connell, and the whole, Kirk O chains and everything else, kind of leaning into the corny dad that he is. I don't think it's natural to Kirk the same way it's natural to JJ McCarthy. It's not. But once Kirk decided to just be himself, it became much better as far as his leadership. Everyone has to do it their own way. Gary says, thank you for the super chat, Gary. If you're such a shredder, why not update the song? Because I love the song. There's a YouTube that I have that's like my YouTube burner account with 100 subscribers that has a couple of songs that I did with some other musicians shredding. So if you can find it deep on the interwebs, you can hear it. I mean, maybe that's a couple of you have been asking me for a while to bring the guitars down into the studio and play before the end of the season. Maybe I think I promised it for a slow time in July, and then we didn't get to it. But someday. But it's out there. It's on the internet. Me playing guitar. It's not. I'm not trying to pretend. NBA Summer League says they will have to see how Okudah and Blackman look. If they don't like it, then Gilmore can come back. That's still going to be out there. Rasul Douglas is still going to be out there. There's Jack Jones is now off the table because he signed today. Was it with Miami? I think. Yep. Jack Jones, not a guy I would have looked at for the Vikings anyway. Just some stuff with the past. Gilmore and Rasul Douglas would be the options. As of right now, though, I think it's Okudah and Blackman are going to kind of battle it out there. And another question is just, do they see Blackman as a guy who could play on the outside? He's been playing some nickel, playing some, outside. It's just one of those things we're going to have to see how it plays out. Miles says, how would you compare the energy in and around training camp in comparison to last year or years past? Did that matter? I'm not there yet with this. Today was a great practice. It was really fun to watch. If you were out there today and you saw McCarthy whipping around the yard and you saw the attitude of the guys, and Justin Jefferson was out there and he's holding the football and he's, dapping people up, and he threw a ball. I was just watching him because he's like a golden retriever out there. And he picked up a ball and threw it at Rondale Moore. And I think Moore was shocked at how fast it got on him, because Justin Jefferson, I'm not joking, has an NFL quarterback arm. Like, I think if Justin Jefferson and Brett Rippon or Max Brosmer stood there and threw velocity, throw for throw, that Jefferson would be right there with him. So he kind of whipped it at him and he caught it like, whoa, like I had some juice on it. But no, I mean, Kevin O'Connell doesn't have training camps with terrible vibes. I mean, that's just not what they've built here. They've got so many professionals. A day like today's great. I mean, Josh Metellus gets his extension. There isn't anybody in there that doesn't want Josh Metellus to be around and things like that. So far, I mean, we're 4 days in, but today was a wonderful practice for this team. And then off we go into, you get into the dog days, you get into the joint practices. Then we'll start to really see what the vibe is coming out. Right now, of course, of course it's good. So Steven says most of the fan base hasn't seen the Vikings playing in a Super Bowl. It would be somewhat of a foreign feeling just to get that first. Oh, yeah, no, it would. It would. And that's another part of it, too, I'm sure, is the fear of the season that once you get into camp, there's an excitement, but there's also probably the little bit of a sinking feeling like it's really going to happen and a nervousness that comes along with it that is not like the off season where you're so far away from it. You're so separated. It's like playing a simulation game on your computer and, playing with Excel sheets and stuff like that. Like that is a different kind of game that you're playing in your head where you're imagining how to win at football, as opposed to okay, for some of you, again, I've been watching this team for 50 years. This is the year, and every loss feels like the worst thing ever. And this is why when people ask about just me and being a fan, right? Like, and why I'm not a fan and just a journalist, is like what the difference is when I'm doing content and, doing all that sort of stuff. Like, oh, you cover the team, you're around them so much. Like, don't you root for them to win and so forth? And my thing is, I know what you guys go through. I've seen your comments after game day. I've seen how angry you get. If I was like that, if I was, rooting to the death for this team to win and live and die with every moment, I don't know how I could do the job. Because I think a lot of you probably, a lot of you can't even, bring yourself to watch the late games if the Vikings lose at noon, right? So, BRYWY, Bry. McCarthy has such a unique trajectory on his throws. Don't know if I've seen it thrown on such a line. Yeah, I think it's just a product of him gripping and ripping for his entire life. Just really like putting all parts of his body into it. I don't know what position he played when he played baseball, but I think even, as a baseball player, he looks like he's at first sometimes trying to throw like an outfielder, not with a crow hop necessarily, but just this, or maybe, you know what it is? Maybe like a shortstop, that play that a shortstop makes where they go into the hole and then they just turn and rip it. Like that's what his throwing motion kind of looks like. And I think what they've tried to get him to figure out is, you don't have to do that every single time. You can actually just put some touch on it. I'll super chat you if you shred for us. Okay. Well, I've got the video here. Let me hit it. Of some of the music I made 2 years ago, and I'm going to screen share. Does audio work for screen share? I actually don't know. If audio works for screen share. So this is it. You'll have to tell me if you can hear this or not. You can see the page. Okay, there it is. If you guys could hear it, it looks like you can. Oh, okay, you can. Good. So there you go. So if you want to go to that my burner page on YouTube and listen to the rest of that, there's 4 songs. I did them with a producer who's a Vikings fan who reached out to me, and then he put the bass track together. We got a drummer, and the record deal is on the way. So there you go. I mean, you know, you guys are calling me out like, oh, you can't really shred. So there you go. There's some shredding in there. Yep, the halftime for the Super Bowl. Yep. I could. Hey, you know, Ozzy passed away the other day. That broke my heart. That's what I grew up listening to, all that stuff. Ozzy, Van Halen, Metallica, and you can kind of hear it in there. And, you know, so there you go. There you go, Gary. See, you know, I could light it up a little bit. Anyway, probably when we've reached the point of me playing guitar stuff that I've made on the show means that we've had enough. Also, I'm very hungry. So it's been a long day of practice and a very exciting day. And here's the thing. So you talk about fans and how they should feel about everything. What I could tell you from the first 4 days of Minnesota Vikings training camp, there's been a little bit of unfortunate news with Justin Jefferson, but it's not serious news as far as my understanding goes. And it's been a good start for JJ McCarthy. I would say his first practice was pretty darn good. His second practice was a little bit choppy and a little bit rough. And then today's practice was outside of a couple throws that were inaccurate, hit the ground. His downfield stuff was really, really good. And I think it speaks to they're going to throw that ball down the field. They're not bringing in a full new offense for JJ McCarthy. It's going to be similar in a lot of ways to what Sam Darnold did. Maybe not quite as aggressive, but I think it's going to have a lot of similarities from what we've seen. So it's exciting. Anyway, all right. One quick thing. There you go. Thank you, Gary. Thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. I didn't do it for the super chat. Oh yeah. Yes. On that same page. Yeah. There's probably some random old stuff that's there, but on that same YouTube page, Judd Zolgad tries to make 27 threes because remember the Houston Rockets, there's also me making 19 or 23s out of 27. Remember when the Rockets missed 27 threes in a row? So I said to Judd, because we were working together at that time at 1500, I said, you can make 1 out of 27, right? And no, he could not. Not even close. And it was disturbing, actually. So there you go. Now you guys know the random YouTube account I started years ago that has Judd shooting threes. Maybe that will go viral now. Hey, Judd's great at talking. Judd's great at writing, but he ain't good at shooting a basketball. Anyway, look, the Purple Insider newsletter has every single day of practice a journal with a collection of quotes, everything that I saw, and my big takeaways. Now, I know you've heard it for the last 2 hours, but if you want to support the show also, you can beg me to shred, or you can sign up for the newsletter. One of those things gets you daily writing over at purpleinsider.football. So make sure you go check that out. Purpleinsider.football is the newsletter. And thank you guys for an awesome, awesome chat. And how about this? As of right now, 666 people, as I was shredding, were watching this. The 666 for Ozzy in the metal. That's cool. That's a good place to end. So thanks everybody again. Great live stream. Really appreciate all of you watching, taking the time. Mondays should be intense. That will be our full reaction to the Vikings' first day in pads. Catch you guys later. Football.